Welcome to our special Rapid Rundown. We're going to cut through the noise, break down the biggest headlines, and connect them directly to the core concepts that you absolutely need to know. All right, let's just jump right in. You know how it is, right? Every single day, there's this flood of new headlines, new crises, new debates. The real trick isn't just trying to keep up, it's figuring out the why behind the what. And that's exactly what we're here to do. Connect the dots between today's stories and the big ideas that are really driving them. Okay, so here's our game plan. We've broken this down into 4 key themes. We'll kick things off with the global picture, then we'll pivot to the economy. After that, we'll dive into some critical public health issues, and we'll wrap it all up with the big debates shaping India's governance. Let's get to it. So for our first section, we're looking outwards. You've got simmering conflicts, brand new partnerships. These international events are constantly changing the game for India. First up, the Strait of Hormuz. Now, you might think of it as just a strip of water, but it is one of the most strategic, most critical choke points on the entire planet. And recent threats from Iran to basically weaponize its control over this passage, well, that has sent some serious shockwaves through the global markets, and that directly threatens India's energy security. And this number, 21%, really drives the point home. More than a fifth of all the world's oil flows through this one single point. So for a country like India, which imports over 80% of its crude oil, a problem here isn't some distant issue. Nope, it's an immediate economic threat that can make prices shoot up and slam the brakes on growth. Okay, switching gears from threats to opportunities, let's talk about the India-South Korea partnership. They've got this catchy phrase for it, chips to ships. The goal here is huge, trying to nearly double trade to $50 billion by 2030. The main tool for this is upgrading something called the CEPA. That's the Comprehensive Economic Partnership Agreement. But here's the catch, and why this upgrade is so important. India currently has a pretty big trade deficit with South Korea, so a key goal here is to get that back in balance. You know, this next development is a fantastic window into Indian foreign policy. India is working on a security agreement with Ukraine, while at the same time maintaining its strong ties with Russia. That right there, that's the core principle of strategic autonomy in action. It's an incredibly delicate balancing act, right? Engaging with all sides, trying to find peaceful solutions, but without getting locked into any one camp. And to round out our global scan, we turn to a totally different kind of challenge. That massive earthquake in Japan was a tragic, stark reminder of nature's power. For anyone studying policy, an event like this should make you think of one thing immediately: the Sendai Framework. This is essentially the global blueprint, the world's official game plan for managing disaster risk. And events like this just prove how vital it is for every single nation. Okay, let's move on. For our second section, we're bringing our focus back home. We're going to look at the Indian economy, where, well, some recent data is starting to reveal some pretty significant fault lines. Wow. Okay, this chart tells a pretty worrying story. The output from India's 8 core industries, and these are the heavy hitters, making up about 40% of our industrial production, it actually shrank in March. And just look at that number for fertilizer output, down almost 25%. That's a direct result of the West Asia crisis messing up ammonia gas supplies. It's a perfect example of how geopolitics on the other side of the world can hit our domestic production hard. And this economic pressure, it's not just some abstract thing happening in factories. It's being felt in households all over the country. Data from the Periodic Labor Force Survey, the PLFS, paints a clear picture of a severe wage squeeze. Real wage growth is barely keeping up with inflation, and for self-employed people, their real income has actually gone down. I mean, when you see an average monthly wage in rural areas of just over 10,000 rupees, you really start to understand the root of this cost of living crisis. And that feeling of being squeezed leads us right into our third section. Here, we're going to look at stories that are really testing the strength of our public health systems and our social safety nets. Okay, just look at this slide. The contrast is pretty stark. So India is bidding to host the 2036 Olympics, but at the same time, the Athletics Integrity Unit has flagged an extremely high doping risk. The numbers don't lie. India conducted way fewer tests than China, but had a positivity rate more than 20 times higher. It's actually put India at #1 in the world for anti-doping violations. This isn't just a sports story. It's about national credibility and institutional integrity. I want you to really let this quote sink in for a second. Tobacco is not just a health burden. It is a poverty trap. That simple sentence completely reframes how we should be thinking about this problem, doesn't it? And right here, this is what that poverty trap looks like in numbers. The absolute poorest families are spending over 6% of their already tiny income on tobacco. Think about that. That's money that could be going to food, to education, to savings. It's why tobacco control isn't just a health policy. It's a poverty alleviation strategy, and it's directly linked to the state's constitutional duty under Article 47 to improve public health. This story is just tragic, and it represents a completely preventable failure of the system. We have 5 children with thalassemia who need regular blood transfusions just to survive, who contracted HIV. The investigation is pointing to a private blood bank that was cutting corners, not using the accurate, mandatory tests. This isn't just a case of negligence, it's a systemic failure and a heartbreaking violation of the fundamental right to health, which is a core part of the right to life under Article 21. Okay, for our final section, let's pull the lens way back. We're going to tackle the big picture debates about India's foundational structures, its laws, its federal balance, and the social compact that's meant to hold everything together. Political scientist Yogendra Yadav has proposed a renewal of India's foundational compact built on these 3 principles. With the country heading towards a new delimitation, a redrawing of its constituencies, this debate is really heating up. How do we balance that core democratic idea of one person, one vote, with making sure states that successfully controlled their population don't get punished with less political power and fewer resources? It's a fundamental question of federalism. Here we have a critical legal and ethical dilemma. In the Priyadarshini Matthew case, the High Court had to remind the Sentence Review Board that its job is to follow the law, specifically the rules in the Code of Criminal Procedure for what's called remission of sentence. It can't be swayed by public opinion. This case really gets to the heart of the tension between the rule of law and populist anger, a classic case study on reformative versus retributive justice. On a more positive note, here's a great governance initiative. Odisha is now the 3rd state to implement a marine spatial plan. So what is that? Well, think of it like urban planning, but for the ocean. It's a scientific way to manage all the coastal resources sustainably, balancing economic activity, the blue economy, with ecological protection. It's a fantastic example of proactive, climate-focused governance done in partnership with Norway. Finally, let's look at a very contentious law. Section 295A of the IPC, which criminalizes outraging religious feelings, goes way back to 1927. The current debate in Punjab brings up a really fundamental question. Where do you draw the line between genuinely protecting religious sentiments and misusing a law like this for political gain? It's that delicate, classic balance between freedom of speech under Article 19 and the restrictions allowed for public order. So we've covered a ton of ground, haven't we? From global energy security and strategic autonomy to public health failures and the very fabric of Indian federalism. Each headline we've touched on is really just a symptom of these deeper structural shifts. So the question I want to leave you with is this. As all these systems fracture and the pressure rises, which of these foundational currents do you think will ultimately be the one to shape the India of tomorrow? Thanks for joining us.
If you're ready to really practice all 8 mains questions from today's news, and you want to get your hands on Prelims MCQs and detailed notes, go ahead and download the complete PDF. Just scan the QR code on your screen or use the link in the description to join our Telegram channel. Keep up the amazing work, stay consistent, and I will see you in the next explainer.